John D. Rockefeller. I believe that name should ring bell, right? From a very humble beginning to becoming the most wealthiest man in America. Now, this story that I'm about to share with you should inspire just anyone who desire to build a business that would last the test of time. Either you are a startup founder or you are just starting out in business, and you need that level of conviction that he had growing up to build a business that can succeed by all means. So let's get into it, and I believe you learn a lot from this. John Davidson Rockefeller was born in the 19th century, roughly around 1830s. His father was an itinerary salesman who was always traveling from one city to the other to sell goods. So he was mostly not around his family. So his mother took most of the responsibility to bear the children and nurture them. So his mother, Eliza Davidson, was a devoted Baptist, and she was able to instill discipline and biblical ethics into Rockefeller himself. So growing up, he took interest in working to earn because there was no fund, there was no money around for him to go to school. So he was, to go out to look for a job, and he was able to get one as an assistant bookkeeper, which was earning him around $0.50 daily. This particular job prepared him for what he would become later in business. So he's meticulous in bookkeeping, taking records, ensuring things were not missing, paved the way for him in business to succeed. So emergence to prominence. When he was 24 years, roughly around 1863, he ventured into the oil business and in partnership with one of the refineries in Cleveland. So Cleveland is one of the most endowed cities in the US, and just 10 years after that, he was able to co-found Standard Oil, which later revolutionized the oil industry with efficiency and scale. Just to give you a context to how the business was back then. Back then, the crude oil market or industry or players were most popular for being mediocre. So there was a lot of mediocrity in the dealings, a lot of oil spillage, wastage, which drive up the costs of operation and also affected the profits. So when he came into the business, he was focused on changing that. So his business strategy was centered around costs, efficiency, which is cost cutting, vertical integration, which means controlling the entire production process, including the supply chain. So just to give you a context, at some point when his crude oil, which was heavily reliant on the rail, transportation from one city to the other, could not, or was too much for the rail, transportation to transport at any point in time. Later, discover a new method to move his oil from one place to the other, which was the pipeline concept. So he had to lay pipeline across cities, crisscross different cities, connecting different cities in the US, just to be able to, beat those odds. And one of his business strategy again was strategic acquisition, just to maintain standard in the market and to ensure that people do not associate his product with other variants of products. He ventured into acquiring most of the existing players, giving him about 90% control of the market. So that tells you who the kind of person he was, right? He was so meticulous and detailed to ensure that his business or his company, Standard Oil, maintain the standard that they have promised the market or the customers and the shareholders. So this gave him, or this paved way for his extreme wealth. So at some point, he was so extremely powerful as a businessman that even the United States president was jealous of him. He was worth about $900 million. And in estimate, that gives you roughly around $400 billion in today's currency. And when you compare today's richest man, the world richest man, which is Elon Musk, is worth about $402 billion. Just a little difference. So that tells you how big this man was back then. And to further break down these threats, or to ensure that he does not further expand his wealth, the US government filed antitrust against him because there were so many allegations against him playing monopoly in the market. So it became so big that it was the only player at some point. It was a monopoly. So to ensure that does not exist, or that does not persist, they were able to file antitrust against him, which broke down his company into pieces to what you now know as ExxonMobil and Chevron. So these were his companies. But they thought that was a big blow on his face. But guess what? To his advantage, it was a success for him, because he later on, had shares in these existing companies, which further shoot his wealth higher than what it was before. Now let's go down to his core value. What were his core value that paved way for this success for him? And I believe this part would be the most interesting part for you to learn from him in how he was able to build a successful business. Number one, frugal and discipline. I know that this is very common to most people who are business inclined or startup founders. Discipline is the rule of the game if you really want to succeed in business. But I think being frugal is not so rampant, because nowadays you see founders just spending all kind of cash, floating cash around. But he was very meticulous in his spending. I think his experience as a bookkeeper reinforced this, action, or this attitude in him to pay attention to every penny he spent in his business. Innovation and vision. I think you should give credit to John D. Rockefeller for being so innovative, because he stood so tall, that he was able to see far ahead of the future. He was able to see what the oil industry would become in the nearest future. So he was able to realize that the current practice would not sustain him in business. Reason for his introduction of efficiency and scale. So to drive scale, you need to introduce a lot of business, a lot of practice that would help you to achieve that. So he's so visionary and he's so innovative, to the fact that he was able to introduce so many concepts that many of the today oil moguls took after him, right? He was able to introduce the crude oil, the pipeline means of transporting crude oil from one city to the other. And these days you see that even countries transport crude oil, transport oil from nation to nation, from different border to borders. That tells you how innovative this man was. And to buttress that, he was so consistent in business to the point that his competitors were not able to come at pars with him, because he was living 50 years ahead of them. So I think that's very, very, very significant of him. And also pragmatism. I think this really affected him at some point, because there were so many allegations of him being monopolistic, driving other competitors out of the market, and a lot of allegations against him for being who he is, because he's just being who he is. He's been a businessman, and he wants to ensure that the standard that his market is bringing, or his product is bringing to the market, is being sustained, and that no other product will now paint bad about his product or tarnish his image, So he was so pragmatic, and he was so consistent in business. His belief system, this also should interest us, especially for those who are of faith, right? And I think because throughout his life, this man was a devoted Baptist. He was a Sunday school teacher. Imagine a billionaire becoming a Sunday school teacher, and he was able to be consistent in that for the time being. His belief shaped his perspective about business. There was an encounter at some point in his life that he had an appointment, a business meeting, where he had to use the rail to go to the venue, and by divine orchestration he missed the train, and that particular train crashed. And that particular incident transformed his perspective about business. He realized that he was destined to be in this business, to succeed. And the way he operates, he never operate business like his contemporaries, the likes of Andrew Carnegie. You have the likes of Commodore Vanderbilt, who was the mogul in the rail industry. So those guys were just doing business as business as it is. They can go any length to ensure that they outsmart their competitors, to the point of even killing, but John Rockefeller was not that kind of person, because his faith formed and shaped his conduct in business, and he believed that he is a steward here on earth to do business, and to use his money to be a blessing to others. And one of the reasons why his philanthropy way of life affected many. He built several institutions, several libraries, several monuments, to his name, just because of that belief that he had about business. So, and after his death, we all know that his business still stands tall amongst big players in the industry, and is a transnational wealth. If there's anything that can qualify more than far beyond transgenerational wealth, I think that is it. His foundation, John D. Rockefeller Foundation, is still blessing life till date. They are still donating about billions of dollars, to different, national cause, to climate, weather and climate issues, to things that affect lives, just to push his values and to sustain them, and that's just who he is, and affecting lives in a very promising way. So I believe this video should have blessed you in one way or the other, and perhaps you've taken one or two lessons from it. If there's any phrase that caught your attention, you can drop them in the comment section, and I will engage with you as well. And if you are watching me for the very first time, you're welcome to my channel. Here we talk about product management, startup, lifestyle, leadership, and the likes. So you can subscribe to my channel, hit the subscribe button, so that when I upload my next video, you don't get to miss it. Thank you, and I will see you on the other side. Peace out.